Welcome to the Tropes and Tropes podcast, where books and friendships collide. I'm Becca.
And I'm Keri, and we're two friends who love to talk about books.
First of all, we want to thank you so much for being here for our very first episode. We are so excited to share books with you, learn about your most loved books, and see where we go from there.
In each episode, we will be talking through chapter summaries, our favorite parts of the chapters, our favorite quotes, how the books relate to our lives, and more depending on the book.
Now, normally, we're just going to be jumping right into our books that we're talking about that day. But today, we wanted to share a little bit about us for our introduction. So, Keri, let's hear it.
All right. I am Keri. I live in Florida with my husband, two golden retrievers, and my cat. And I started reading with Little House on the Prairie. That's when I fell in love with reading. And then I threw myself into books like Anne of Green Gables, Jane Eyre, all the classics. And since we are talking, we are the Tomes and Tropes podcast. Becca and I wanted to share our favorite tomes and our favorite tropes. So my favorite tome is Pride and Prejudice. Basic, I know, but I love it. It's so good. And it also leads into my favorite trope, which is enemies to lovers. I cannot resist a good enemies to lovers trope, which is probably why The Viscount Who Loved Me is my favorite of the Bridgerton books / show.
Hold on. Does Pride and Prejudice count as an enemies to lovers?
Yeah. They hated each other.
Wow, I did not know that. I'm Becca. I live in Virginia with my husband and an adorable German Shepherd. I've always loved to read too, and the first book that really got me into reading was Love Comes Softly by Jeanette Oke. It was my mom's favorite book. She passed it on to me. It's a great book if you haven't read it. Super easy read, very funny, but that's what got me into reading. And then my favorite tome is probably Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. My favorite trope, I have 3. So top is going to be enemies to lovers. I love a good enemies to lovers story, but I also really love the dystopian training academy, school, whatever that looks like. I love it's kind of like a forced proximity, but I love like going to classes with our characters and learning things, and that's just kind of where my heart is. So I love a good enemies to lovers in the training academy. That's where my heart is. But I also love, like I said, dystopian novels like Divergent, The Hunger Games, The Selections, all the things. But now we have some questions for each other. So, Keri, what trope are you and your husband?
This one was hard. This is a hard question. So I think it's a combination of love at first sight / unrequited love. And here's the reason. If we're being honest, my husband saw me first and was like super interested. Like immediately when he first saw me, I was playing a guitar. It was weird, but don't know why. First and last time I was like playing one. But he saw me, was like, I want to meet that girl. I want her to be my wife, whatever.
Of course he was.
Whatever. And I say unrequited love because he definitely was the first one to like be like love and say I love you and all that. But I was like, no. I wasn't quite there yet, but it's okay. We made it. So that would be the trope that me and my husband would be, I think.
Okay, nice.
All right. If you were a main character in a book, what trope would you want to have?
This one was also hard for me because I love enemies to lovers, but I think a true enemies to lovers needs to be like a life or death situation. It can't just be like, oh, I hate you. Oh, I hate you too. Like it has to be a life or death situation. Because of that, I don't think I want enemies to lovers, but I do like the rivals to lovers. I know that's something that is kind of like a newer trope of that. So I think I could get on board with like a rivals to lovers because I'm also super competitive.
I could
And
see that.
yeah, so I think I'm gonna go with rivals to lovers.
Oh, I love it.
Carrie, you're up. Which book universe would you want to live in if you could?
So similar to your trope answer from earlier. I have three. I could not
Okay.
decide. I would.
Ooh.
Okay. First is I would love to be on Prince Edward Island with Anne Shirley from Anne of Green Gables.
Okay.
It looks gorgeous in real life. And the whole vibe with the house and the farm, like goals. So
Nice.
such goals. But I would also love to live in Narnia because the
Mm.
magical creatures, you have Aslan, who just like in Liam Neeson's voice, like who couldn't want to be there? Like, I mean, really.
I never made that connection that it was
Oh,
Liam Neeson.
he's so good. They just
That's
came
so
out
funny.
with like a thing where he like talks to you so you can sleep, and I
Hmm.
am going to buy that, I think, because
Wow.
I love his voice. But anyways, my third one, Harry Potter. I would love to live in Hogwarts. Imagine how many reading nooks would be in Hogwarts. Like you could just
So
hide
true.
and read for hours, and I would love it.
Yeah. And you could be invisible if you wanted to be.
Exactly. Just throw on the cloak of invisibility and just live my best life. Like nobody will bother me.
Those are such good answers. I didn't even think
Thanks.
of Narnia.
You ready for your last question?
I'm ready.
All right. Which book would make the most interesting Broadway musical adaptation? And for you listeners, Becca and I are also very big into Broadway. We really love Broadway. So this is a perfect question.
We do love Broadway. Okay. So I went back and forth on this a lot because I think books turning into a Broadway musical is number one, such a great idea because you get all the intentions of your main character. And if it's in a third person point of view, you get all the intentions of all the characters. And you can really write a good adaptation of a book into a musical, where in a movie, sometimes, they don't always translate really well. However, I think I figured out my favorite, and it's going to be the Selection series. Now, Carrie, I don't think you've read the Selection series yet,
I have
but
not.
basically it's this another dystopian series, but it's this dystopian, like, basically like beauty contest where these girls are chosen from each, like, I don't remember if it's like a county or a city or like what, some kind of geographical area, and they're each chosen as a representative, and then they go and they have to compete on who's going to marry this prince. And it's so interesting, and I can just see like all these girls in like one number, just like each having like a different little melody that goes together, and like having
Ooh.
like this big number, and like it's a beauty pageant, so it would be dramatic and the costumes would be beautiful, and you could get the love song and there's a little love triangle in there, and I can just like see it on stage already. So definitely we're gonna go with the Selection series.
It sounds like a Six/Hamilton combination, and I'm here for it.
Yes, yes, perfect
Well done.
example. Good job.
For our very first episode, and those right after, we have chosen to read The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So we both love the Hunger Games series. We both have read the trilogy, watched all the movies, and with us wanting to read the book before or right around when the movie came out, we thought it was a great book to start our podcast.
Exactly. Now, as we said at the very beginning, we are so excited to have you on this journey with us. Thank you so much for tuning in, and get ready to chat about the 10th annual Hunger Games.
And may the odds be ever in your favor.